Hello and welcome back to the Radio 6 podcast. I'm Chambourine. I'm joined by GoluMolu once again, and it's been a little while, Golu. We've turned ourselves into kind of academic weapons for the last few weeks, and we've not had a chance to do much Siege. We did watch a lot of Siege, but then it was locking in for the exams and stuff season. But I'm done. I think you've still got a couple more to go.
Yeah, I got one on Friday, so we're on Wednesday today. So we'll be missing part of the major, which is a bit sad. And then the next one's like after major. So we got the major, enjoy that, and then crack on with a bit of revision post-star for the end.
Yep, that's Major's a bit more forgiving my schedule, so I'm not too bad. I'm pretty much done. I'm good to go for the major. And that is what our topic is for today. It's Manchester Major time. It starts tomorrow as of recording, so we are right up to the death before we actually release this. So hopefully you get to listen to this before you start, but if not, then you've got at least a little bit of a description
Time
of
capsule.
how things are going to be happening, a little rundown and stuff. Of where we stand going into Manchester Major. Of course, first time in the UK in a long time. It's going to be fun. I'm going, you're going, Golu. Hopefully we get to see a lot of you guys there, and I'm excited for it. But before that happens, I have quite a lot of Siege before they actually get to the actual venue and get to watch things. Format-wise, play-ins start tomorrow. Now, if you have been around a bit for Blast R6, this is kind of similar format to what they've done. They've done a couple phases, and they like to have the play-ins, Swiss stage as well for phase 2, and then finals as well as like straight playoffs. It's pretty standard stuff. I like the way that it's done. It gives us a bit of variety of kind of different formats, and then of course like SI you have the groups. It's like I like having a bit of differences. I don't know what your feeling is on the format of it.
It's slightly different this time, right? The playoffs or the phase 1, sorry, is all like one large bracket rather than being split up into 2 groups, which has made like trying to figure out who gets out a lot harder because it like depending on how the first round of games go kind of swings what the second half looks like as well in terms of who ends up on what side of brackets. I think it's interesting. I think my only issue with it so far has just been I feel like this draws a little off. The fact that Liquid and G2 play each other first round feels kind of rough.
Yeah.
Listen,
we've got you say that, but when we get into in terms of who's qualified and how they qualified, it'll become a bit clearer. I think.
Yeah. True.
I kind of like us having slightly different formats for different things. I think that's fine. I think that's getting a little bit taster of different stuff. I know that Swiss, some people like Swiss, some people don't. Of course, first stage for play-ins, it's literally just a double bracket elimination. It's not anything crazy special. Top 4 move to the playoffs, and then they join the rest of the teams that have already qualified to phase 2. People who have, of course, they were the ones that, of course, achieved that, the ones that won their leagues and stuff and finished it at a certain level. So they get to go straight into the phase 2. They don't even have to play the play-ins. They don't just get to sit and wait and see who their opponents are going to be. And then that's the Swiss stage. That's where things start to get a little bit, I guess, convoluted, a bit more happening. There's a bit more permutations of who can win this and where's this going to do. And I think that's kind of fun. And then, of course, it's a straight kind of playoffs at the end for the finals, which is exciting. Top 8 teams will be on the stage, and that will be who we'll be seeing. So, of course, we'll find out within the next week who that is going to be, who we are going to be seeing in person. And I've got my BDS flag. I'm ready. I've got my BDS jersey. I'm hoping we can just sail through the Swiss and that'll be us. I'm hoping that's the situation. But anyway, I digress. We'll move into I guess discussing who's going and how they got there. So the first region I think that we'll start with, I think is I guess that makes the most sense would be Europe, because we are from Europe and the major is in Europe. So I think that's probably the best way to kind of start. And it was an interesting season, wasn't it? Just it was a little bit strange the way that it played out. I don't think I think there's a couple of shocks and a couple of expected ones. Of course, BDS being the strongest one going into it, I don't think anyone was surprised at their kind of outcome, but it was different. It's certainly something I wasn't expecting it to play out the way it did.
Yeah, I think obviously BDS coming in were a team that we were all very excited for. We had Malta like coming out of SI, right? Which was obviously sort of the test run, the pilot for a lot of these teams. Because we had BDS, G2, Secret, and ENTS all there, and it was the first showing of ENTS. And I think that was where the crack sort of started to show for ENTS. They didn't have an amazing start to Malta. And that sort of carried through into the new season. I think BDS coming in, very, very strong. I think we were expecting that, and they looked fantastic. Just everything about them looks really, really scary. And you're now looking at a team that, like, the reliance on Shaiko to do things is so much lower when you've got the likes of Users and Solotov added into the mix. That backline still incredibly consistent. I mean, I think this team looks really, really good. And it's a favorite for most people coming into this major for a reason. And I think that is the expectation for a team like BDS, right? You already mentioned you want to get through that Swiss cleanly. You want to make it to that main stage. Not making main stage is a complete and utter failure for this roster, right? Like,
yeah. I think so as well. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. Especially, I think I agree with that, and I kind of disagree with it. I agree in that the way that the form that they've shown. So on paper, we knew when the roster came across everyone's desks that it was essentially the new super team. Everyone was like, "Wow, that's a crazy roster, absolute gunners. They just have the pedigree behind them," and we were kind of expecting them to do well. They've then backed that up by winning Malta and then winning the regular season, being the top EU team as well. So I think from there, where now the expectation is, you should get through Swiss to the main stage. I think at the start, I would have been happy if they just get to Swiss and do decent. And because the thing for me as a fan was like changing from, it was a big change. Wasn't so much the roster changes, was more the communication change. Changing from being a complete French-speaking roster to then speaking in English, and that is, I don't think people realise how big a change that actually is. Especially having, like, I met Licky Fack and he has the strongest accent ever, and I was like, whoa, right, okay, I can't imagine trying to play Siege, trying to understand that, and I have a strong accent myself, so imagine like me in a team with like French people, like it'd be difficult. It's I think it's a big thing, and I'm quite happy though of what they've done, and I'm excited. I think that the sentiment is that they'll probably get to main stage. I think sentiment is that I think a lot of people are saying, like the up there for the favourites. A lot of the predictions that I've seen a lot though are still putting FaZe at the top, which I always find funny because everyone puts FaZe at the top for just every event for the last year and they never win it. It's certainly going to be exciting from that roster. I think that they've at least they've backed up what they kind of set out to do. I think that they're doing well, and I think people forget that they are still a new roster, and they are still figuring things out, and they will they'll be found out. I think at Manchester, I think that facing off against especially the Brazilian teams, I think that people will have will find out these areas if there is the communication issues. Like in the regular season, the gun, just having the sheer gun skill is enough to get them through. Yes, their theory did look pretty good, but I think that they would almost on paper it was like, yeah, they're going to go through. They're going to qualify definitely. But anyway, I think is there any more you want to kind of add on BDS, or do you want to talk about other rosters and other teams?
I think the only thing that I really want to see more from BDS is I just want to see Solotov just get a little bit more in there. I think he's had one of these quieter sort of stages, right? Someone who's always sort of talked about, like, at least within Europe, as being right up there at the top of our, like, the entry game in Europe and just always being sort of on top of things. I think he didn't play poorly, but you're looking at a big star player like Solotov being added into the roster. I think if he can also sort of meet where, like, we've seen, like, insane performances from, like, users off the rip, you sort of add to that line of Shaiko as well. Like, I actually think we haven't hit the ceiling for what BDS can be.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of scary when you consider that their only loss was like they lost one game and it was to ENTS, and I would consider that like a fluke, effectively, right? Like you're looking at a team where ENTS at the time not doing very well, BDS at the time in very, very strong position, clear front runners in the league. They lose a one-off game, it's fine. Like, do you know what I mean? Like it does end the flawless streak, but it's whatever.
Yeah, it was quite surprising when it happened. But speaking of ENTS, they kind of made things interesting for it. I think they had a pretty decent season. Almost almost made things very interesting. We went down to the last day for some of the teams to actually get through. In terms of who actually qualified, Team Secret, second position, and you have Into the Breach as well, who managed to get through, which I think is interesting, because I would never pick these two. Would never have picked these two to go through. I've been a bit of a Secret fan for a little bit. I've been kind of enjoying, not I say fan, but I say enjoying what they've been putting out. And it was nice to see them in Malta, and I kind of thought, yeah, that makes sense. Like, they've kind of found a bit of form, and they look pretty good. And kind of enjoy the way that they played. But Into the Beach for me was one that I was just like, I just did not see them making a major, and I'm kind of pleasantly surprised, I guess, with that.
Yeah, I'm really pleased to see this roster make it for ITB. Again, big UK core, right? It's 4 UK players. The org is really leaning into that, and I think if they can make it to that main stage, you're gonna have a crazy good atmosphere.
Yeah.
In the arena, I think it's gonna be really, really good. So I do hope they make it to that main stage. Even just like to play one game, right? Like just for that. I think ITB stand a pretty good chance. I think Europe felt a bit weird this season because of a lot of teams that we would have expected to really step up, not having done so, right? G2 didn't look like sort of G2 coming off the fact that, like, it's a 4th place team at SI. Virtus Pro disappeared off the face of the earth. That's 3rd place SI into not even making it to playoffs in Europe is crazy. And it's really strange as well when you consider that coming like through SI, that meta shift into like being so incredibly defender-sided really, really favored them. I had expected that to carry through into their form for the new season, especially considering they're coming into a league with a lot of changes when they've been completely consistent in how they're bringing their roster together. And they're a team that like stylistically doesn't really tend to shift when changes happen in Siege, right? Like even as metas shift, you sort of wait for them to find their comfort spot. Like the SI meta, very defender-sided. You're leaning into a lot of this utility with things like the Fenrir, the Azami. You always have these tools to play with, and it gives you a lot of freedom as the defense to stall out and wait, and it leans into them like a T. Sure, Azami was nerfed. It's not really a nerf.
Yeah.
Like, come on, let's be real. Like, this operator is still going to be seen every single time. So that did shock me a lot, and I think that sort of gave way to some of these teams, like Team Secret, like Into the Breach. Fnatic not living up to expectations was a bit of a shame, especially with Fnatic coming back to Europe. I was really hoping that we would see a deep run for them making it to the major. It's another one of these UK orgs, right? With a decent bit of that UK core behind them. Obviously, Leon Goods at the helm. So I think the league as a whole, a bit all over the place. But ITB and Secret both making it up, especially with the fact that they're both bringing up new and young players, is really, really good to see for the health of the region. And there's sort of been speculation, right? Like, I think you were joking on Twitter, like, how long until Adrian gets sniped by G2?
Yeah.
Look, these are all possible.
It's weird. It's a really weird situation because I feel like I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head by saying it was a strange season in EU. But I feel like results-wise, some of the teams got better. Like, some of them got better results than maybe they should have. G2, for example. And I feel like there's some teams that have needed to make changes for quite a while. Wolves, for example, I think. And that, yes, they've made pretty much every single major for the last while, but they've just been unable to get that extra level. And sometimes you have to miss a major to do it. BDS, missing SI. And then they come back, they sail through EU. And they could potentially be on to win a major this time. Hopefully they do, if there's a fan. But I think that you mentioned Adrian there. I think he might be destined for G2. I like that little storyline.
He's been the brightest spot.
Yeah, he was really good on Secret. Yeah,
Secret.
He was really good, and he was moved roles as well. Like, he was moved off of that. He came up as that gunner, and he was moved on to that support. He's played a lot more support, and he's played it really, really well. He's been really impactful, and he's made a difference made a huge difference to the roster. And Secret they've looked good. I liked they looked good in Malta, and I kind of thought, I was like, yeah, like, this team has potential. I still didn't expect them to, solidify the major, especially with Wolves pretty much always there. Virtus Pro, again, pretty much always there. and then you had like Fnatic with the big expectations, you had BDS with the new expectations, G2 are pretty much always there as well. So it's like, well, that's 5 teams stuff for it that you're kind of like, okay, you're like, oh, sure, it could be in there. So it's always going to be difficult, but the fact that they did it, I like it. I'm enjoying it, and I'm excited that we're getting different rosters. Obviously, my only concern is that a lot of these players haven't played on the biggest stages, haven't been in the challenge of Brazil awaits, basically.
Yeah, my concern for Secret is I think they relied a lot on individuals really coming up to sort of salvage some of these rounds, especially on attacks. I think that really showed in their semi-final against ITB, right? Like, you look at the way that game is played out, and there were so many times, especially on Bank, where it was just waiting. You just wait Secret out. How that translates to online, I don't know. I genuinely think Secret is going to have a pretty... Like, I really want to see Secret against some of these Brazilian teams.
Yeah.
Because I think you're looking at the entry potential players like Doom especially, right? Who's just very willing to just walk in and take gunfights. And like, you see any amount of space, you sort of want in, you take it, you grab it for yourself. How does that translate? And I think, especially against some of these North American teams, against teams like, I mean, it's part of the reason why ITB did it, right? ITB very good at understanding what their opponent wants to do. They have a very strong sort of strategic team behind them, obviously, right? And that means that when you go into these series, when you have that time to set up for what your opponent's going to do, and Secret is a team that people are going to look at and be like, cool, I think we can figure them out pretty comfortably. I think against if they bump into ITB or BDS, I think it's looking a little bit unfortunate for them, right? I'd expect them both to re-lose that matchup. Some of these North American teams like Dark Zero, that want to break you down, figure out what you're going to be doing, and are very happy to sort of mold their playstyle to sit around you. I think it's one of my biggest indictments of North America is the fact that we see they're so they really want to lean into this idea of like, we mold our style to you. And that consistently hasn't been what's enabled them to win championships, right? Because what happens is you have Brazil and then Europe, which is slowly leaning into this more and more, is incredibly proactive regions. It's like, it doesn't matter if you can break down how we're going to do something. We're just going to be so proactive at changing up and shifting on the fly. And it's all about those mid-round adaptations and that like in-round like thought process that makes it very difficult to come in with one single game plan that's going to work for them. I think Secret is the team that is most susceptible to that sort of breakdown of them.
Yeah. I think the interesting thing about the just the actual teams that have qualified with the like obsession of with the fucking the words escaping me. With G2, we know how they've performed on these stages. They've been there before. They're seasoned in it. The other 3 rosters, though, they're new. They're fresh. So BDS, Secret, and the Reach. Yes, of course, BDS. They've been before on that core, but it is different. So it's kind of refreshing, actually, that we're getting something different from the whole region. And I think you can perfectly, though. I think though with Secret, though, there is a little bit of concerns of how they can step that game up a little bit. Into the Breach are the same. I think prep wise, I think that they're evidently a very theory based team. I think even like the way that Kenny approaches things on Twitter and stuff, and talking about how, or even like his interviews. I mean, it's like after the game, he was kind of saying, on that border was a BDS. I think he was like, yeah, they got ran over by BDS, and it was almost like oh well, actually. We actually played alright. We actually thought that we were in the position that we wanted to be, because we'd actually improved things. It was a 7-1, and they'd improved things. We'd be playing in these areas and stuff. And I think that takes a lot of guts to like say things like that and be like, well, yes, we've been ran over today, but I'm actually quite happy with what we've done. And then that then translates later in the season, and then they end up putting up the results later on where they've made the improvements and end up third and then go through to LCQs and they did play better against BDS in that final, I think.
Yeah, they looked good in that final. I don't know. I have more hopes for ITB. I think just because I kind of want to see them do it. Right, I want to see these players make the run.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of that like copium injected in there, I think, but I just have a good feeling about it. I think they're a team that, again, like you say, they're going to be able to step up in big games. I think you look at the fact that they've got someone like Kendrew behind them who is like has this magic talent for just like when it matters most, really showing up and having those life games. Like I don't know if there's someone who's played in like more tight relegation games back when we had relegations. Like every single time it felt like Secret were in and around that area and he was just hanging on by a thread. Um, Obviously has that experience of winning a Pro League finals at the time with Navi. So I have a good feeling that ITB are going to be in a good position to like pose a sort of like dark horse threat for this event. Do I see them winning it? No. No.
I know.
But I can see them making that major stage. I think they have top 8 potential and I'd like to see them pull off some upsets here. I think I'm looking forward to it.
I think a lot of them comes down to draws and stuff, and when you end up facing other people, it's like G2 facing
That's
like
true.
early on in it. I think like some of them will come down to that, as to how far they can go. But yes, I'm equal parts excited for Europe's prospects and also like concerned, like a little bit like because like you're kind of like on one hand you want to like send your biggest names and like your biggest teams and orgs that are always at majors, you know, like Wolves are always there. Wolves always do decent.
Oh, don't send Wolves again, man. Like
I know.
I'm so fed up.
I know.
I'm so fed up of seeing Wolves turn up to every major and just be fine. Like they're just fine. I'm pleased we're seeing some change up. Like don't get me wrong. When I saw the list of teams going, and it's like your 3 first teams qualified to the major from Europe. BDS, oh that makes sense. Into the Breach, okay. Team Secret,
yeah,
sure, okay, yeah. Like I'm sat here at the start of the season thinking like, okay, BDS G2 VP like fanatical Wolves, right? That felt very comfortable to be like big orgs, big names, teams that are like have that success in the past. So to see new fresh things is exciting, and I am looking forward to seeing them sort of take it to the rest of the world. The G2 being our 4th team that makes it made a lot of sense. I was sat there on that LCQs. I was like, if G2 doesn't make it, I'd be astonished. Part of me, and this is coming as a G2 fan, was kind of hoping they didn't make it.
I get you.
Right?
I get you.
Like, because G2 do this every time. Every single time, it's like scrape in, make it to quarters, maybe a semi-finals, lose, run it back next stage. And I think one of the things that has made G2 so successful in the past is being willing to make these big changes. And we haven't seen that in a while from them, where it's kind of been like, you know, this core of 4, and then you make a couple of changes in and out. Like, I forget Blur won an SI.
Yeah, I know.
The guy hasn't been heard of since his SI win. Like, I don't know. I think they're a team that are starting to fall into that Wolves camp for me, which I hate to say. Like, it kills me on the inside to say that, like, G2 are entering, like, their Wolves era, where it's like, they make a major, they look good, they play it out, and then they go home. They're not Wolves level of meh, but, you know, come on, G2, like, let's get a really good run, or let's restart, you know?
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's kind of like what I mentioned earlier, where like sometimes it is actually a good thing to miss a major.
Yeah, well, BDS, right?
Yeah, it forces you to go. Yep, that's it. Right, we need to take some time, change these things. We have the time to change them, workshop some new things. G2 to scrape by. It was a really poor season from them. Like, it went down to the wire. It went down to the point where they're literally waiting for the last game. It's out of their hands. You never ever want to be in the situation where you're waiting for another team to ensure that you can qualify. It was ENCE, right, as well. And ENCE had that to fight for. They were playing against ITB. ITB actually didn't actually have anything to play for other than certainly more SI points. So it was completely within the realm of possibility. ENCE were on decent form. There's an alternate universe where it's ENCE that go into the ENCE that do that, and not G2. So, but it's G2. As soon as you step into a bracket with G2, you just know that they're going to go deep. And looking at the teams that were in LCQs, you were like, yeah, G2. Like I was never in any doubt for me. I knew that I was like, yeah, G2 will go through this, and they sailed through it and didn't even drop a map, and they just went right completely through.
I don't think they really broke a sweat, right? Like, they had a a little bit of closeness with Forgotten Days on that consulate, but I think for the most part it was a pretty comfortable bracket for them.
Mhm.
And I mean, it did help. I think that Ents played really well until they reached G2.
Yeah, it's
like
unfortunate.
like
Yeah.
if Ents had made the major, I think it would have been the hardest like bracket run to a major. Going through what VP Wolves G2 in a final, and then you make it, like that would have put that credibility on them for that position. So it's unfortunate that they almost couldn't make that come true. Um, but I think you can't count G2 out when it's like back against the wall. Um, I think what like the last couple majors they always lose to W7M/Furia.
Mm.
So it's like if that's the caliber of teams that are beating you when you're on like your last leg, like what's the just like I don't know. I'm trying to think what's the thing in Frona called where like you get like the last chance to live.
You're
You're
the one that
dragged
lives
back
for
onto
it, not me.
Yeah, I've been dragged back onto it. It's not healthy. I've uninstalled it again actually. But yeah, that's I think you just they were gonna make it. They were gonna make it.
Yeah, I mean it's T2.
It is G2.
It just is T2. There's no surprises that they're there. I think that depending on what they do, how far they go at the major, they make changes. I actually feel like they might make changes anyway. I feel
Yeah,
like
I can see that.
I feel like they might already be in the works as to who it could be or whatever. My bet was I've tweeted it. My bet was Adrian. I think that Adrian's getting sniped right off that team secret roster, and slotted right in there. I but hey ho. Is there anything else you want to add for EU? Is there anything you want
I don't
to
think
throw
so. I
in there?
think EU's looking pretty good for the major. I think we could see 2 or 3 teams make quarterfinals, which would be awesome to see 2 or 3 European teams on that stage. Obviously, increase the chance of making it to a final, and I need to see an EU team in the final. I think it'd be BDS. I think that's like how to wrap it up, right? I think BDS are by far and away the best team coming out of Europe.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're where our hopes should lie.
Yeah, there definitely remains lie anyway. I've been a BDS fan for quite a few years, and it's been difficult. It's been difficult because they can win stuff, but not stuff on the actual circuit.
Not anything that matters.
Yeah, exactly.
They got
So
Jonsping.
like,
They got the Jonsping win.
yeah, I know, but it's still there's still a bit like that was fine. I was happy with that. I was also the only one I didn't watch, by the way. So I'm like, am I the issue? Did I just not like? Is it me, Jesus?
If they make that Sunday final, you just like taking a day
just
trip around
sit with my
Manchester,
back
like
while I'm
sightseeing
there,
or something. Yeah.
not actually watching them. I think from there, I think the logical step is either Brazil or NA. So it's up to you. I'll let you choose who do you want to discuss first.
We can jump into NA. Save
NA.
save Brazil for our last one. Well, last of the main 3.
And
First off, I'm gonna note this off. Mirage is gone.
woo.
Let's go. Only took us 6 years.
Yes, we got rid of them. We did it. We did it. Also, I think that I could probably like encapsulate all of the team qualifiers or like the regular seasons by just saying strange again. There were some strange results. Unexpected twists and turns again. That we see teams that they announce the teams that are in the league. They're like, okay, like there's 9 teams, and you go, yep, cool. There's your top 4. There's your middle of the table, and there's the people that are losing, and then it's just completely different. Beast Coast won it. I did not have Beast Coast. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna jump on and pretend that I thought that they were gonna win any league, but they did, and they looked really good doing it. By the way.
Yeah, I think Beast is one of these teams that like I saw it. I was like, this is a middle of the table team, right? This is like this is a classic NA throwback.
Yeah.
To the period of time where it was like you would just have these like journeyman rosters of like it was like a group of 8 players who would just take it in turns being on a team together while the other 3 were on like other squads. Right? It'd be like, oh, Verkel's off to Rogue. Oh, Verkel's not on Rogue anymore. Cool, let's grab Verkel back on. And it's like, oh, Bosco's gone to SSG. Oh, let's grab like this guy back in. And it's like For the longest time that like sort of felt it. And it was reminiscent of that to me, where it was like 5 players, all who have pretty good success, but the entire reason for this was sort of off of the roster mania caused by Citizen leaving Sonics.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, that was like the catalyst for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Where Citizen's leaving Sonics, M80 want to pick him up, so they implode their roster. They just go, cool, we're getting rid of everyone bar Spoit, basically. They kept Spoit and
Brought Kino back in.
Kino back in. Everyone else changed.
Yeah.
Which, again, Kino, like, they have something on Kino. I'm telling you. M80 have something on Kino for this guy to still be around after everything that happens with this roster. Because it's just like, it's like his third time being dropped and brought back on. He obviously didn't play SI because they brought Yoga in for it, which I know they weren't expecting to be able to pick up Citizen and like Kino fitting into that a lot better. So it makes sense, right? If you get told like, "Hey, we're bringing Citizen, so it's gonna be Citizen and Spoit. Do you want to play?" It's like, well, what? Like, do you want to go play for like Luminosity instead? Not really. I think you'll take Spoit and Citizen as your entry lineup. But that sort of inspired a lot of things, right? Obviously, Space Station, getting rid of Hot and Cold, moving on to Beast Coast. I think for Beast Coast, the biggest thing that they sort of talked about themselves was just like finding a system that works for them. You have 5 players coming in from 5 different backgrounds, all having their own ideas of success on different teams that they've had, right? Like, they've all had these sort of runs, they've had appearances at majors. How do you find that balance? And they sort of just went like, you just pick one, right? That's sort of the implication is like you just eventually you pick one idea. I think Fett did a great job putting this roster together, right? Because you've got so many moving pieces through the off season to be able to come out of it with something that looks so set and stable, where none of these players you're concerned about in terms of their ability or being able to have like the quality to make it. It's now just getting them to work as a team. And after a slow start to the season, we finally saw it. And I think there's been a lot of excitement for what Beast Coast might be able to do. I think their just raw experience is going to give them a very strong baseline level for the Swiss stage where they're going to be able to just always have a pretty decent game into anyone, I think. I don't see them being like taking down giants, right? They're not going to like be beating FaZe or anything. But just a very good, consistent team. And I think that's what's helped them win North America, where everything else is changing so much and looking so odd. That just baseline level of consistency, where every single game they're going to look good. They're going to play out their game plan well, and they're just going to win.
I do think that Beast Coast, should they get themselves onto the stage, I think that they'll have some of the best fan interactions. I think the crowd will be loving Beast Coast.
It's like Gunner, Hot and Cold.
Yeah, like... I mean, they're classics. It's like you said, it's a run it back roster. It's 5 players that have also never played with each other, which is a wild statement. That they managed to win managed to win their regular league. I'm excited to see them, which doesn't happen often because I'm like a massive NA hater, and I will defend that till I die. You could come after me all you like. I'm just an EU shell at every opportunity, and I'm keeping up the old traditions of NA versus EU, right? But yeah, I enjoyed watching them. I like rosters that kind of try and change things around and aren't afraid to take risks. And Fett was given the opportunity to build an entire the roster and just pick players and be like. And I think that they've came out of all the teams that were involved in that roster mania, as you kind of put it. I think they've came out the best. Some of the roster, I think that's probably the most balanced, I think, and they've obviously ended up with the results of it. M80 will probably feel a little bit hard done, which I know they were feeling a bit hard done because they technically won a decent amount of games, but they just kept winning them in overtime, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, no, we should technically be the ones that won it." And I think that I get that they'll feel a bit hard done that they could have been the ones at the top that, but they didn't. It was Beast Coast. It's just quite funny the way that the format can work.
Like, I don't know. I'm not buying into this, right? It's like they got the same number of points. It's like the whole point of this system, right, is you build it in a way where it's like you get rewarded more for bigger wins. And it's like look, yeah, you got one extra win over these teams, but two of
Hmm.
them are in overtime. That's less valuable. What is like the whole system is designed with this idea that overtime sort of gives points to both sides. So you can't then turn around and be like, we actually won more games. It's like, bro,
Hmm.
it took you two overtimes to get there. They
Yeah.
just did it in like one of those games doesn't go to overtime. Sure, you get that extra point and you've won. But then it comes down to that round differential, and it's just like, cool. Well, guess what? Your wins were less dominant,
Yeah.
right? You have closer games. So if you're looking at who's overall been better through the season, sure, they might have lost one extra game,
Mm-hmm.
but they looked like a better team, right? When they win
Yeah.
hard. They can actually close out these games. And, I mean, I just think the whole complaint is so dumb. Like, it's like the fifth time that we've had this complaint in Siege now, where it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I've actually got less points because, checks notes, didn't win well. It's like, well, if you just won more rounds, like, I don't know.
It's still
This whole thing just
yeah.
tilts me every time it comes up.
It's just very funny that they won all their games and they didn't top the league because of the way that.
I mean, they still lost two games.
Yeah.
Right?
No, they won all of them in regulation. They won them all, but they just I think they lost. Well, no,
I'm
I
sure
think they lost. Yeah. Sorry, I think they lost. I think they lost the same amount. I don't know.
Yeah, they lost. They went 6-2.
Lost. I'm looking at the fixtures now.
And they went 6-2, and then Beast Coast and OXG went 5-3, but they had 5 regulation wins.
Yeah, right, okay, yeah.
So the way the points break down is like the extra points they get for winning in regulation made up for the losses that they got.
Stare at Wikipedia for so long that it just all blurs together.
It does become blur. Yeah, I mean, I just think that's like how it goes. I think M80 are an interesting team. I think they'll scrub out again. I'm not ever predicting M80 to do well until they prove that they can do it. Because, I mean, I've said this for the last 2 events now, right? Like, they didn't show up in Copenhagen, so coming into Atlanta, I was like, I'm a little bit cautious. I'm not going to put any stock in this team. They probably just scrub out again. Maybe they can have a run, and they scrub out. It's like, okay, maybe this team's just like completely cooked. Okay, we go to SI. You know what? I'm not putting any faith in them again. Right? Why would I? They have given me zero reason to put faith in them internationally. And what do? Bottom out again. Now, I think this is a slightly different version of the roster. Oh, it's a very different version of the roster, right? Like, it's only got one of the players carrying over from SI. I just still think they're gonna bottom out.
Yeah, I actually agree with you.
I can't tell you why. Like, in theory, I think this team looks really, really solid, right? And coming into stage, it was like, I think I had them to come like second or third. I think NA was the only region I actually made a prediction for. Like, I meant to do it for the others, I just forgot. But it's like, this team looks like a team that will just beat NA teams. Right? It's just what it is, because it's not a North American team. It's 2 Brazilians and 3 Europeans. I think they'll just beat North American teams. They'll look pretty good. They have that strong sort of entry potential with both Spoit and Citizen. Citizen looks really, really comfortable in a lot of these games. Had a really good individual like stage for himself. Noodle looked very good. Had some like the game against Dark Zero, I think, had some highlight moments for Noodle, including a 1v2 clutch, which looked so clean on Barbecue Kitchen. I think there's been some really good showings from M80. I just still don't have that confidence in them coming together at the international stage. I think a big part of it is because it did feel like a lot of their games, hence sort of like the reason why we saw like that higher density of overtime games from them, is because it took a lot of individual players, right? Like, it was big rounds from Citizen, big rounds from Spoit, Kino coming in for some really big clutches. I think Kino had I don't know how many. Kino had a lot of clutches this stage and looked very, very, very comfortable being in like these 1v2, 1v3 situations. But the team play from them wasn't what was winning them games, right? It's just like that raw ability of the roster that outweighed anything that was coming in from like the inconsistency of the season in North America.
Yeah, this is that M80 season actually played out the way that I thought BDS's would play out. In that they would just win games just because they're gunners. They would that's it. They would just win games. BDS actually proved to actually have some pretty sound strategy and communication behind them, and looked much. I think BDS looked much better than what like I was expecting them to look.
Yes.
And whereas M80, they still struggle with the same issues. The same thing again. I don't think I'm going to put I don't think I'll be rating them pretty highly in any predictions. I've fallen victim to it once. I thought this time maybe, and I got nothing from them. So absolutely not. If they do anything, I'll be very surprised. The Beast Coast final game in the playoffs, the Beast Coast just looked so good compared to them. Yeah, Nighthaven went to OT, but M80 love to go to OT. So let's be honest, there's no surprises there. It's also a Nighthaven game.
Yeah, exactly.
But Beast Coast, they looked really good. M80 they couldn't quite get it across the line with that, but they still qualified. They're still going to be there. They still get into phase 2. The part of the top 3, Dark Zero as well, of course. Being the top 3 that make it through to that phase 2 area, and then of course, the last one though for your last chance one is Space Station. I wasn't surprised to see them go through that last chance qualifier. But also it was at the same time. It was a bit strange. You know what I mean? I was kind of like, maybe Sonics have got it. Maybe.
Yeah, well, Sonics made the change going into LCQs, right? They benched Geo, brought back Grixer.
Grixer, yeah. I think that
brought back Grixer.
Yeah, the strange thing for me is that Sonics fell in a really funky position because they played really well at SI.
Yeah.
Like really well. Of course, yeah, they lost it still. But like you think, oh, okay, like that core still there, still decent, still alright, and they just were kind of lackluster. I mean, not as lackluster as Shout to Loss for nuking their entire roster, buying into the league, and then basically losing every game. Got to respect that.
I think the loss goes up there with like Team Empire levels of fumbles. Like, just guys.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, W7M, who picked up the lost roster, right? The majority of it, did not make the major. So there's some like weird way where you're like, oh, like we sold our roster and they didn't even make the major anyway. But at the same time, like you did bottom out in North America. That's pretty criminal.
That's pretty criminal.
But this lost roster, again, like it's the name brand that I think like caught a lot of people off. It wasn't loss. It was like a T2 Brazilian team.
Yeah. I think it's potentially just them getting the spot, getting the foot in the door, and then decide to go away from stage 2 potentially. So I imagine it would be
I think
more
that's possible.
But we'll see anyway. But yeah, back to the kind of point I was talking about, just Sonics and Space Station and that LCQs. Sonics, they just had a very kind of they had a decent go at it for the actual regular season. It wasn't the war. I wouldn't say they were looking like completely atrocious, but they do seem to be suffering from like a bit of an identity thing. And I think that because Space Station have their set and are like, yep, this is our roster. We've had it pretty consistently. Yeah, they bring in Iconic as well, by the way. Making in them the All American superstars and all that. I'm not like a massive SSG hater, by the way. So but I'm also kind of happy that they're there because I want to have a villain, someone that I can just shout at. That's what I want, right?
I really hope we see a good run from SSG. I think SSG. I'm looking at them as like a quarterfinals team, by the way. Like straight up, like they had a weird season in NA. Don't get me wrong. They just about make it to the playoffs. They kind of get bottomed out of playoffs, and it's an LCQ run.
Mm-hmm.
They looked good in that LCQ run. Like the week and a half between 2 weeks I think they had, but between their outage in the playoffs to that LCQs, looked like they just looked really good.
Yeah.
I think they're coming in with a lot better form around using Iconic to give them these advantages. And it's like they got rid of Hot and Cold, who had been a very stable piece of that roster, but like you have to bring Iconic in, right? So like sure, like it feels a bit rough that you drop Hot and Cold and he wins the whole thing. He wins the league.
Yeah.
But I think in the long run, it's a fantastic call that you have to make if you're SSG. You also move into a situation where you have the core of the Astralis roster that came second at the Charlotte Major, right?
Yeah.
You've now got J9O, Iconic, and Forest. So again, you've got this team that has a lot of experience, very comfortable, or should be very comfortable playing on stage by now, right? Because SSG have been in these quarterfinal situations already, and I think as a team, have always been one of the best, if not the best, North American team at playing against non-North American teams, which has consistently been an issue where you see like time and time again you can only beat North American teams. This has been a big problem for Dark Zero in the past. Obviously, this SI they kind of corrected that a little bit. So I think of all the teams, I think Dark Zero and SSG are the two that I am most excited for because I think they look the most complete as a team.
Yeah.
Which is the North American win condition.
Exactly, and that's why I think though we're spending a lot of time we're kind of discussing Base Coast and M80 because they made the changes and they put in a good fight and stuff like that. But Dark Zero were also there, including that they get through and also qualify. They're there as well, but they haven't made any changes. I feel like they obviously made those changes going into SI. And they, in my opinion, should have done better actually in SI because if we all cast our mind back, upper bracket semi-finals, Virtus Pro, Skyscraper, the first F-bomb on a broadcast on Six Invitational in quite a long time from Xenox, because Virtus Pro just managed to kill, I can't remember who it was, but gets the kill onto the player going for the defuse in a 4-versus-1 situation and somehow Virtus Pro won it. It's insane.
Mental.
Like Dark Zero could very much been in playing against FaZe in an upper bracket final. They should have been, and I think that obviously the issue is they drop down into then play G2 and you're never, let's be honest, like unless you're a Brazilian team you're not beating G2 on a stage, like it's just not gonna happen.
But then if you're a Brazilian team you win for free, so there's a nice little trade-off.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I think that Dark Zero had a better chance against FaZe in that scenario than but right. So but
historically always been very good against FaZe Clan as well because FaZe are, they're not like a NIP, right? Like NIP are the least Brazilian team. FaZe have always been that sort of like weird middle ground where they're great at leaning into the aggression that the region's known for. I won't go too deep into FaZe because we'll jump onto that in a minute. But I think stylistically, Dark Zero have always had good times into FaZe. Like you think of like the Night Haven Labs in Atlanta, banger game. Still one of my favorites. I think that game was like a highlight from that tournament.
I feel like we've had quite a lot of bangers in recent time. Like, I feel like it's just this, like the siege over the last while has just been great. Like, Six Invitational Final was like historic, like game.
Yeah.
Like, that Night Haven 6-2, like.
I think crazy. We felt a little bit of a down since SI just because of how great SI was. And I think the shorter time between SI and the new stage has messed with a lot of things.
Yeah.
I would like to see that extended if possible. I'd like to see something shifted around with the time that gets spent off, so we have less time off before SI, more time off after SI. I think that would sort of... And I think a lot of the quirkiness of, like, we talked about how strange both Europe and North America have been, is in part because you're making these changes so quickly to the start of your new season, where it's like, you finish SI, you don't really have time to breathe because you immediately have to be thinking, like, are we making changes? Are we picking up a new player? How do we, like, practice with this new player when there was literally a month turnaround? No, less than a month.
It was less than that. It was
3 weeks.
Like
right?
Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, it was a very, very quick turnaround. So like, people are. So the weird thing about that is you're probably going into invite thinking, depending on which result we're gonna make the changes, and this is this is who we've got our eye on probably already. Some teams will maybe have just went, doesn't matter what the result is at invite, we are not changing anything, which I think G2 probably were in that scenario where they were like, we don't care what happens at invite, we're not making any changes for stage 1 because there's just too little, we'll make changes in the summer. I think that there's basically 2 ways to look at it, and I think that's probably how it's kind of played out. But yeah, the kind of 4 teams obviously that made it through, it's delightful. I think we were kind of expecting Dark Zero, M80. I think I'd probably say I would expect SSG to have made it as well.
I thought Sonics would be the last one.
I thought Sonics as well would probably be the last one, especially given how well they did invite. Yes and no, yeah. Again, they lost Citizen, but I felt like they still had at least the kind of backline of the same kind of roster. But East Coast get there, they surprised a lot of people, and not just by making it. I mean, that would have been a surprise enough, but they won the full thing. So I'm excited going into this, seeing another roster that didn't expect to see there, and I think the more of those that we have, the more that it gives you more variety of like not knowing the outcomes of games, because sometimes you'll think, right, cool, we have the top teams here, and then but you're like, right, cool, these, you can pretty much look at it and pick your prediction, like the prediction things now. Like, I mean, I think of the playoffs for SI, I think I only got like 2 wrong for the playoffs, and it was just because it was just the way around I had them. Because you could just look at the team and go, yep, W7M, FaZe, G2, like these are all the teams that are going to be there.
Yeah.
So I like having a little bit of variety of them. Also, just because I know we've not actually touched on it, and we probably should have did it at the format at the start. There's for the leagues, there's like 3. There's 2 types of qualifiers, which because I was just thinking it earlier when I was talking about ENCE and G2, and I was like, wait a minute, ENCE put pressure on G2. G2 almost didn't make it, but they still were in LCQs. It's because they dropped into open qualifiers. ENCE dropped into open qualifiers. That's why, because there was 2 sets of qualifiers. So there was open qualifiers to qualify for the LCQs that some EU players were from. So that's why. So just in case you're wondering why things were a little bit confusing with that, but if you look at the formats, that's why there was basically the top teams qualified straight away. The kind of middle teams, they went to LCQs, and then the bottom teams went to open qualifiers, and then that was essentially how it worked out. Yeah. Anyway, now that I've clarified that, moving on, I think, unless you want to add anything else to any of these teams, anything. Or,
Doctor Space Station good. Beast Coast looking forward to see. M80 probably going to scrub out again.
I pretty much agree with you. Anyway, Brazil time. So, and you know what? That same old word's going to come again. Strange. Strange again. Not as strange, I think, as the other ones, I think, as to who kind of has ended up qualifying. But I still think that we've had a few surprising teams get through and a few surprising results, I think. FaZe, I mean, I don't think there was any doubt FaZe were going to qualify. Furia, of course, they used to be W7M roster before, so they are, again, should be expected to go through. E1, though, was one that I would never have chosen to get qualified for it. What's your opinion on it, I guess? First of all, we'll start with FaZe.
So I think FaZe, the team you expect to make it, right? Like FaZe Clan not making it would be like one of the weirdest things ever. They're a team that is so incredibly consistent in their own region. I think they're just a world-class team, right? Yeah. Like, there's a reason why they're always making like semis minimum. Arguably should have been in the Copenhagen, Atlanta finals as well. But obviously lost, turned up on the day, right? So you get that spot. Yeah, I just think this team is so incredibly good. They didn't drop a game. Just completely swept the entire region.
Yeah, I mean, they're everybody's favorites right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everyone has FaZe or BDS and then maybe Furia, which I think is like probably the correct opinion, right? If we're being completely real.
It always makes a really funny storyline, and I always giggle at it that every time, because same invite, the same at Atlanta, people are like, "Oh, FaZe look amazing. This is going to be the one to do it. This is going to be the one to do it." And then, because Furia have just a kind of okay season, and to be fair, I think this is probably like one of their worst seasons. They looked really shaky, in this regular season, Furia, but I just think it was really funny that people are like, "Oh, yeah, FaZe are the one. FaZe are going to win it," and then Furia just come out of nowhere and do it again. Which I'm tempted to say might be the storyline. I think that's what I'm going to do. I've not done my predictions yet, and I think I'm going to do them on this live. I think I'll pick them. I'm a notorious cursor of teams, so I try to just lock the predictions in and just leave them, and that's that. But I think I'm tempted to go for Furia taking the win just for the chaos of it. Just for people not expecting it. But FaZe they're consistent. They're a class team. They're great to watch. They're exciting. They play outstanding Siege, and they just basically did what PDS did. They just completely rolled right through their regular season. They look comfortable the entire time. I mean, they beat Furia 2-0 as well in those playoffs, and so they've kind of
Yeah.
beat that at least a little bit. But whether they can just get, I just want to see if they can get over that final hurdle, just break that mental thing, because you've seen it. I mean, the X6 Invitational was the perfect example of it. Nighthaven Labs just 6-2 up. You just need to get one thing, and you can kind of see it in their eyes. And Grace says to me as well, like, she was like, they're going to lose. She turned to me, she was like, they're going to lose, because I could just tell that they just don't have that switch, that extra bit of mentality to go, right, let's just lock this out. They don't have it, and I want to see it. I want to see it at some point, and I don't know if I don't know if I have it in me to be like, yeah, FaZe can win it this time, because I just don't know if they can ever get over that hurdle. They've done. I mean, they have. Of course, they have got a major win.
3 of them won it in the past.
They have done it, right? But it's just this current iteration seems to just have that.
This current iteration is like also vastly better.
It is, exactly. It's the thing. It's just like
crazy much better.
It's literally just the mental part of it. That's all it is, because they've clearly got the talent. I mean, you're sitting 6-2 up on 6 invitational finals. You should be closing that out, and
6-1.
They just can't. They just can't. 6-1, yeah.
Crazy.
Forget. I'm giving them way too much credit. I'm giving them even more credit.
Yeah. I think they're just gonna be good, right? Like FaZe, they're very aggressive. They're very good at just like being in your face, and they sort of like enclose on you so efficiently, and that's what makes it the hardest to play against them, right? Like from my perspective, it's just like you don't get these opportunities to move and like look for gaps against them, right? Which is why they do so well domestically, because you're looking at a region which is built upon this idea of like, we can get aggressive here and make something happen, force your opponent's hand to like, I mean, I want to say that you invite them down into the mud with you, right? But like,
exactly.
Because of how good it is, it doesn't feel like that. Whereas like that's normally how you talk about a region like Japan League, right? Where it's like all a bit chaotic, and it's like, I guess we're playing siege like this now. Whereas like, it's but it's just done so well, and I think they're the team that like they just have a great read into how they want to play the game. They play their map pool really efficiently. But you are right. Like, I think when you compare it to the rest of some of like the star teams from that region, I mean, like I don't even know what it is, right? Because they have like the individuals, like
Exactly.
like Handy, mega stage so far. Souls has been looking really strong as well. Like, I don't know why this team just like this team just will continue to be at the top. They don't need to make changes.
It's
They'll
kind of
just...
like it's kind of like the same issues as what PDS had before they changed things, because they went so long without changing them. I think BDS is slightly different, but I think it's comparable in that they, like BDS, they win 2 gamers 8s, right?
Yeah.
They but they just consistently can't quite get to that upper echelon of. It's like fully just in your brain, I think, because you have the gun skill, you've done all the prep, like you're looking really good, and you just need that extra kind of click to kind of work. And Fury, I have it. They've proven it, because I mean, each time they come in, each event, despite being the winners, people have kind of still doubted them. There's still been doubts as, can they though? Because they've not had a great set, they've not had this, but then they just activate. You know, it's like when you put, it's like Canadian always does decently well, but you throw him on a stage and the man just gets you to a stage just by being there, because of the mentality, because of the type of person it is, and that I think for FaZe is the test, I think, for them. But this to me is the one where I think that they are fully the favourites. This is the best I think they've looked going into it. I think.
If you want your 3-0 team for the predictions, this is your 3-0 team.
Exactly. I think that FaZe are the only reason they're not in the final. I think is depending on the draw. Like if they get a Fury or they get or they could be the S early
for sure,
or G2.
And that's should be unlikely, considering they're very likely to go through as that 3-0 team. It'll be a 3-2 team that they end up playing in that quarterfinals. So I'm expecting it to be something like a classic rivalry, FaZe Clan Space Station. Like, I think that's just going to be the quarterfinals draw.
I would actually kind of like for SSG to get that. By the way, that would be kind of be.
It's a FaZe SSG. It's a FaZe ITB. It's something like this. And again, I don't see a world in which this FaZe Clan loses that matchup. Scenes if ITB beat FaZe
Yeah,
Clan in
yeah.
quarterfinals,
Scenes
by
in
the
the
way.
arena as ITB put FaZe out.
Mental.
Like, what the heck? That would be absolutely mental. Imagine that. Yeah, FaZe, they're going to be solid. We know they are. They are going to put up the numbers. It's just getting over that final hurdle. Can they do it? Is the question. Moving on though, I think E1 finishing in the second qualifier spot was like Furia had a completely just a strange situation going on. Like like Furia got like knocked down in the playoffs because they faced FaZe. That that's where they end up in the kind of
Yep.
the lower part. But Furia they just didn't like themselves at all for me. I don't know what it is. I don't know. Maybe they've completed the treble. Like we've,
I think that's it.
you know what I mean?
Honestly, it's just like, look, you've just come off the back of winning SI. You have a 3 week holiday before you start the circuit all over again. Like, yeah, like sure you've been pulled onto Fury and there's like something to prove there, right? Like, oh, with new orc, like get a win for an. Look, you've just done like the mega run. It's only natural. We see this every year with SI, by the way, right? Like the fact that they made it to this major is actually impressive.
Yeah.
The SI winners often don't make it to SI to the next major. Like it happens. It's happened a lot, right? Like TSM did this, NIP did this, SSG did it before them. G2 won it and then like went mega bad. So it's like
it's like you reach that high though, and it's like,
winning SI and then not making the next major is like something we've seen historically, and it's always just like, oh yeah, like they just made it to the major. Again, Furia just like they're treated a little bit differently. People take it a little bit more personally. They're like, oh, see, look, this team's like falling off. Nope, they'll be back. They're always a team that has these oopsies, right? Like they lost to GK twice on Clubhouse. Like, come on, guys. Like, this isn't because like GK are the second coming of like OGG2, right? Like, it's just because they lose games sometimes. They are the epitome of like a vibes team. And you see what happens when the vibes are high, right? They make it through. They pull it together at the end, very much like G2, right? There's a reason why people always pull these parallels between W7 and G2, and it's what makes that sort of rivalry they've had for the longest time so compelling, is because, like, again, it really does come down to, like, which team's feeling it on the day, and consistently that has been W7M, now Furia, sort of, like, building off of that, and they've always had that going into them, and they put it together at the end. I mean, their game against W7M, was it the cleanest game? I mean, map 1 was a bit of a scrap. The rest of it, pretty solid, right? Like, I think Furia, they go, oh, we actually need to win now. They can find that aggression. They've got 5 players who you never want to take a bet against in a gunfight. And it's just like, yeah, I guess we find our groove, we dig in, and now we're just going to win. And they make it to the major. They come in through in the 3rd seed, and this matters less than it has ever before, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, coming through as a 3rd seed to a major, is it ideal? No, because you're sort of lower down in that seeding process. As a team like Furia, I'm not concerned with where I am in the seeding process. And this is like a thing, right? Like, the best teams in the world shouldn't be concerned with where they are in the seeding, because they should just feel pretty confident beating whoever they play against.
Yep.
And if you're Furia turning up to the major, like, you sit down and your round 1 opponent is like, oh, you're playing against Into the Breach. Are you like, oh no, the European 2nd seed? Come on, man. Like, it's not happening.
Especially given the kind of, I guess, chaotic nature of the rest of the places. Like, they'll be more than happy with that, you know what I mean? Like, they'll just be like, yeah, cool, it's fine. Obviously with G2's performance this season, there's a very like possibility that we end up with like G2 versus Fury earlier than but
well, G2 will be coming into like the bottom seeded, right? Because they're coming through the phase 1.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, you could get like a FaZe Clan G2 round 1 would be kind of spicy.
Yeah, you could have, yeah. Like,
I don't know exactly. This is all like guessing how the seeding works. When we get to the Swiss, it's usually figured out how it's weighted.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit chaotic trying to keep up with them, but I'm glad it's not me that's doing the seeding basically.
Yes.
That's basically it. E1 though. Let's be honest. Let's just be honest here, guys. I did not expect them to be anywhere near this or even in contention. They qualify not as a third seed. They qualified as the second seed above Fury. Of course, Fury kind of got done by like drawing phase early, but that is what it is. But E1, they didn't look up to par when it comes to playing against FaZe, but FaZe are just flying. They're just completely on another level, I think, for that region. E1, though, I mean, I will like, fully admit, like I didn't know a lot of the roster going into it. Like I just didn't fully. Like I heard of a couple of them here and there, but realistically, just didn't really expect much from them. Was just kind of like, okay, that's fine, middle of the road kind of roster. We'll probably see Liquid get through, or Nip, or the kind of W7M that was Loss. And even Black Dragons look pretty good as well. But E1 are the ones that go through. I mean, what's your vision on how E1 will perform? I guess like how do you think?
For similar reasons to like why I'm quite excited to see ITV, it's the same for me coming into like a team like E1, right? You've got two players who have come up from effectively tier 2 Brazil. And then you have a couple players who've been all over the place inside of Brazil. Like Perez, we'll forget, but he was at the Jönköping Major on Black Dragons. So you have that experience there, yeah. But it was Perez, SDK, Emts, all on like bottom feeder Brazilian teams.
Yeah.
Right? Like none of them were pushing to the top of that table. They were consistently like on 9th, 10th place teams. Outside of the Jönköping run, but again, that was November 22. So it's like quite a while ago. Yeah, like Arthur and Flastry have just come in and really helped this team out. I think they've just looked much better. We should note it was a playoffs run. Like this team was not like beating everyone. There's a really fun thing that gets done in the LPL, which is the Chinese League of Legends League. If anyone doesn't know, but basically that league is so chaotic. It's like 17 teams, double round robin, best of 3s is how their like regular season is done. And every stage, there's a stat put out, which is the league if it was just playoff teams. So once playoffs gets determined, someone basically like goes back and goes like, cool, we take every game that was played against a non-playoffs team off, we re-bracket the league and see what the standings are. And something like this is quite interesting here, right? Because E1 were basically like scraping playoffs. Not scraping playoffs, but like they beat everyone below them in regulation. Like everyone who finished below them in the standings, they had beaten. And everyone who finished higher, they had lost to in regulation. So it's just like, yeah, they're the perfect like gatekeeper team for playoffs. They're very aggressive. They move very quickly, very like true to like. You think like that they strike me as a team where it's like someone's like, Brazilian teams, they go fast. Okay, guys, we are going fast, and everyone just commits to it. It's like, oh yeah, okay, cool, I'm down for that. And they all just decide like, yeah, we're gonna flood into this building on attack, and we're just gonna meet you immediately. It's like they've got this intricate roam set up. We're not dealing with utility. We're not gonna like take our time to like florist drone stuff out and like blow up the keeper barrier. It's like, oh, you're standing behind a keeper barrier. Well, I will guess right or left and flick between them enough times, and eventually I'll headshot you. It's like, cool, fair play. And I think this is the biggest thing, especially coming into that playoffs run, is they just double down into that aggressive play style, and it really worked for them, right? Like they're coming up against teams that they're supposed to probably lose to. Black Dragons in their first round. I thought Black Dragons would look quite good, and I was quite excited to see Black Dragons make it to the major. I was thinking like, you know what? This is a team that I'm feeling pretty good about, right? Like in the situation where W7M, formerly Loss, I wonder how long I'm going to have to do this, by the way.
I know.
Like, because I feel like I have to do it this stage, right? We just come off this. I have to do it this stage. Do I have to do it next stage? I don't know. We'll find out. But W7M coming in had been a bit shaky. They obviously had Volps back in the lineup. I'm so happy to see Volps out of Team Liquid Prison. I mean, ironically, Team Liquid made the major, right? But Volps is off of Prison. And so with that going on, like in spite of that, still looking very comfortable. E1 just come in, and again, it is just this aggression. It's just moving so incredibly quickly. I think there was a stat put out by Spack on Twitter on all the graphics he's been doing, which was like as a team they have the fastest entry time across the board, and it's like an average of like within the first minute they have entry pick. when they have entry pick, right? It's like 45 seconds or something.
Yeah.
It's like they just get in. And I think you translate something like this to a major, I think that playstyle actually works really well. Because a big part of this, like, sort of, whenever we have these internationals, it's always figuring out, like, which meta is correct, like, which region has the correct read. And we've consistently seen Brazil always do really well, specifically because no matter what operator is strong, if you win a gunfight, they're dead. And so it's just like, oh, look, if we don't give you time to set up properly, or if we just overload onto your, like, one guy who's, like, got the really important job of holding Aqua Stairs on Nighthaven Labs, and it's like, oh, by the way, here's, like, 4 flashbangs and now we're swinging you. It's like, great, you might be Warden, but if you just get swing and die, you lose that position. And I think E1 are going to have some real upset potential. I don't think they're a team to win the major. I'm not looking at them as, like, they made a great run in playoffs, don't get me wrong. And I think they're going to be a very exciting team to keep watching, but they are just that. They are an exciting team to watch and enjoy while they're here.
Yeah, and again, I like that. I like a little bit of diversity in who gets to go to majors. It's it's always good. It's always really healthy as well, because, like, you don't, if it's always the same ones, then there's no, like, incentive for teams to not just, you know, like, to actually put in effort or change anything or do anything at all. Which is why sometimes it's good to miss things out. Wolves, I'm looking at you.
Ninjas in pajamas.
Nip, I'm looking at you as well. Liquid, though.
Don't get me. Frauds. Right. Frauds of the century, by the way.
Let's be honest. Fluxo Nation.
Fluxo Nation.
Right? We're all about Fluxo in here. We found that. We watched all of it. We watched the LCQs. Fluxo, they got 1 point in the regular season. 1 point. And
Fluxo. Yeah.
And they run through Keydstars, Black Dragons, and then they almost get it done against Liquid. They lose an OT and Bank, by the way, and Fluxo, they looked really good. They looked, like, ridiculously good. Like, if you watch the Liquid Fluxo LCK final, it's such a good game. I think, of course, at the end of it, like, Liquid, they just have the pedigree to win these type of things.
It's not even like Liquid have the pedigree. It's just like Nesk and Palu just decided they wanted to go to Manchester. Like, they just wanted to be back in the UK. It's like, okay, so, like, the whole Fluxo thing, right? And like I'm now a Fluxo fan. Like, this team's got me sold. It's all from a meme. Like, I'm sorry, but, like, this team was so horrendously bad in the regular season. Not winning a single game and managing to secure 1 point in a system where overtime scores you a point if you lose an OT.
Yeah.
They were terrible. But they come into LCQs and it was just a different team. Like genuinely, I was sat there like, have they, like, is there ringing involved? Like, do we need to be concerned? Like, Big Brother's on the computer now. Like, they stop messing. It was just the coordination between them. That was the biggest thing that changed. Right? We went from a team of Fluxo where it was just consistently players just sort of getting caught off on the attack, being completely disjointed, where it's like they're trying to push out a position and players would just walk in one at a time and try and take gunfights and consistently lose them. That all changed in the playoffs, and they just it was just that communication that massively shifted things. We talk about that LCQ final against Team Liquid. They were the better team. Yeah. Like, I refuse to believe that Liquid as a team played better than Fluxo in that series. It is simply because Nesk looked phenomenal.
Yeah. Palu got MVP.
Palu insanely well. The two of them, and it's a little bit like the sort of like the Kendrew sort of stuff, right? Where it's just like sometimes you just have a really, really good game from these players, and you're just not going to beat them. And this felt like that. Mm-hmm. I think Liquid are in a weird spot. I think they're playing this sort of roulette of just changing a player out every year. And it's just like, oh, you're a promising Brazilian talent. Let's grab you in. But the team doesn't change. Right? And it's like, you take someone like Maya. And in this series against Fluxo, Maya is on things like Castle. Like, I'm sorry, did you watch, like, the Atlanta Major? Like, did you see what this player was, like, doing? Like, the whole thing with Maya is that they were just an incredible prospect, right? They're running around on Solace, causing havoc, the game against FaZe Clan, it's Maya doing a lot of the work in dismantling FaZe to get Lost into that final against W7M, right? Like, this is an incredibly talented individual player who just like you need to sort of like be ready to play around, and that was the success of Lost. Maya slowly started to pick things up throughout the stage, especially like looking more comfortable on attacks than on the defense because of playing things like leaning onto operators like the Buck, where you have that sort of flexibility and that freedom. I would like to see Liquid sort of play around that a little bit more to like, if you're going to be making these changes and bringing players in, like we see what happened with Volts, right? Volts looked very strong in this sort of comfortable flex position on W7M, gets pulled into Liquid, is forced back onto that supportive backline because you have players like Nesk and Palu who are sort of stepping forward instead. It's like, I feel like we need to start to see this shift in ideology from Team Liquid and some of these players that have been their core if they want to stay together, because like, you're not the star player anymore. Like, you have these great games, but like, let that add to your legacy rather than being like, oh, you finally turned up, right? Like, we're seeing Nesk and Palu. It hurts to say it because that like their players have been watching forever, right? Especially Nesk on this Liquid roster, but it's like you have players in this region. Brazil has shown its depth of talent. Let's get those players in to be that firepower. And then you have people like Nesk who you can lean back on, have that experience to sort of guide and shape the younger players. That's just how we start to see these things change. And Nesk just has stunning performances, isn't the player he used to be. And this is ultimately what I think is just going to hold Liquid back. Like, Liquid need like crazy things to happen for them to like even make it out of playoffs, play-ins, I think.
Well, yeah, because the play-ins bracket's already been released, and we already know it's Team Liquid versus G2. So I mean,
all best of threes as well. That's the important thing, though.
All best of threes in the play-ins as well for the first phase. So Team Liquid, realistically, for the teams that are in that, like, of course, we're going to get to something later on, but we'll kind of go over those in a little bit. Probably cover this at the end in terms of the actual bracket. But Team Liquid, they're in a difficult scenario just off the rip to start with. So, I'm pretty much in agreement with you. I think that things probably need to change in some capacity. What formula that is, I don't know. I don't know. I don't pick rosters. This is not my job. But overall, I think Brazil are looking. It's a little bit strange the way some of them have played, but I still think that they're still putting two of the best teams. They're still putting two of the best teams on the planet, and FaZe, Fury. You're still going to see them probably on stage. Let's be honest.
For sure.
E1, I think, will be a delight to watch. I think they'll probably put up some kind of surprising performances, and Liquid. I mean, they are still Team Liquid at the end of the day, so like you can't really go right. They're gonna be absolutely rubbish, but they still have a little bit of aura and maybe a little bit in the tank.
I don't think they're making out of play-ins. I don't think they're making it out of play-ins. I just there's not a team there. That's just like the way I'm gonna put it, right? And it's like that for me is the biggest issue. Even their wins in regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not like we're seeing like these big team moments. That did start to shift towards the end. I will give them some credit in that LCQ run. They looked better in the LCQ run than they did in regular season.
Mm-hmm.
But like, that's how you win an LCQ run. So it feels like a bit of redundance that like everyone who won through the LCQs is going to have looked better in the LCQs than the regular season. It doesn't mean you're suddenly good. It just means you played better.
Mm-hmm.
And carrying that form across into an international event is different. They're not a team that I'm putting any stock in.
I think that's a pretty fair point and pretty fair assumption to kind of put out. Any more you want to add on Brazil before we go into kind of some of the other regions?
No, I think that kind of wraps things up pretty comfortably.
Yeah. So, it's up to you which way you want to do this, because we have, of course.
I think we keep it kind of shorter on these ones, right? Like,
yeah,
we'll just talk about the teams that make it to the major and just.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I didn't watch too much of the other regions just because of the way time zones work for me. I think you probably watched a bit more like of
Yeah, I'm a bit of a degenerate.
a bit more. I think what you were Asian, but I think what Oceania stuff fit are in the
Asia,
morning. They're like in the middle of the
Asia,
day, aren't
Oceania,
they?
Japan.
They're like usually
I
during the middle of the day, aren't they?
I
For
will say I
us.
went through like a spree. It was Japan League would start at 6 a.m. on a Saturday morning,
Mm.
and I don't remember what inspired this run, but for some reason I was up like 3 weekends in a row at like it was coursework stuff.
Mm.
So I'd submit coursework at like 3 in the morning. I'd be like, I could go to bed, or I wait 3 hours and then Japan League starts. I'm like, you know what? Let's wait till Japan League. Um, it was an interesting season in Japan.
Yeah.
Scars coming through top, I think, is not a surprise. Scars looked really, really good. Like domestically, they looked by far and away the best team. And that's been a consistent pattern now for quite a while. I'd had hope that we were going to see a different second seed team come through. Vite and Kintrope looked, or Kintrope, I can't pronounce her name. Both looked very good. Kintrope came third in the end, and there was that like whole debacle with playing 99 rounds in a single day. Because of basically the way that the LCQ bracket was made for Japan League. So Scars win their own league very comfortably, like the regular season very comfortably. There was sort of very little going on. I'd say outside of that, like again, Vite and Contrope looked the best. Coming through, there was a lot of excitement around Vite at the start, or Vite, but eventually they kind of couldn't pull it out, and Scars win. You come into that playoffs and Scars just bodied everyone. Didn't drop a map in playoffs. Like, just looked solid. They also have benefited a lot from the pickup of Nina. Nina was obviously really, really strong. Northeption before, coming into Scars. I think you just add to that front line. And, like, even at, like, SI, right? Like, Scars have been a weird team historically because there's, like to joke about the APAC effect, right? Where it's like you turn up at a major, you do really, really well because no one knows who you are. And then every other time you turn up, you're just kind of mid because teams are like, oh, this is your gimmick. Right? Like an APAC historically, outside of like OG Fnatic, has been a very gimmicky team. And all of the teams that have come through have kind of had this, right? Like you think of like Damwon Kia, it was a lot on like these big lurk plays from Yas at the Sweden Major that got them to that second place. The fact that they were sort of like being able to get a lot of benefit from the fact that LMGs were as strong as they were. That was never the same again, right? Teams figured out how you contain Yas. Has looked like a very different player since their first appearance on the international stage. You look at teams like CAG. They came in, they played so weird and chaotic, and teams basically figured out like, oh, they're just going to do weird shit. And if you just don't let them get free kills on you, you'll eventually win. That's how you played into CAG, right? You just sort of like went, oh, they're doing a Glaz strat. Okay. Let's not peek the smoke. Oh, now they just have to like walk into sight with no util. Okay, great. We get a free kill. Weird team, force you to play in weird ways around it. Obviously, like added to Monty's classic. This has always been the case. Scars now have gotten this extra sort of front firepower. You look at like Rec, for example, at SI was putting up monster performances, and you now give them another tool. I think the biggest issue with a region like Japan, I think this is the same for Korea as well, is that talent, like the biggest talents, aren't on the same roster together. And while this makes the regional league more entertaining, because you are seeing lots of players who are all very capable going up against each other, it puts you in these situations where when you get internationally, you're no longer putting your best foot forward. And this is like slowly that correction, I think. And if Scars can keep expanding on this, I think they're going to start to look really, really good. And I expect this team to continue being like the domestic powerhouse. It is this Nina Rec front line. If they can come in with really big games and catch people off, I think you're going to see this team do well. They're straight in phase 2, which helps. I don't see them escaping phase 2. I think they're like a 1-3-0-3 team.
Yeah, I think I can probably agree with you there. I like I said, I don't watch much of the only other kind of league outside of the kind of I guess the old guard of Europe, any in Brazil, I guess. It was LATAM. I watched a lot of LATAM again just because of time zones for me. Like I watch I only watch the ones technically that fall in my evening or over the night or whatever, which tends to be those three. Which means I miss a lot of Korea, Japan, and Oceania because they're usually well at work or whatever. And I haven't watched too much of them, but Scars like on my based on my knowledge from Six Invitational. Rec was putting up the performances. I'm glad that they're getting a bit of more support as well. And I think that they've pretty much hit the nail on the head. I think that's always been their issues, that they haven't had enough of a stacked roster.
Yeah.
And I think that it brings a bit of excitement, at least a little bit of. Do we have a bit more potential here? Do we have something? I think I probably agree with you in that they don't get out of phase 2, but listen, Swiss is always chaotic.
Like no shade, but like can we replace Fish like I'm sorry, man. I really am. But I think this team's in a really good spot if that support back line is just a little bit stronger. I don't know who you get instead. It is the difficulty again, right? It sort of requires again some movement from other teams. But I do think Scars are looking the best they have since that Copenhagen run. I'd argue they look better than that Copenhagen run, in which they obviously beat SSG to make it to quarters, right? And they beat FaZe on Sky, which is now an iconic FaZe clan map. So, not a team to snub, but I'm gonna snub them and put them as like a 1-3-0-3 team.
Yeah, I think that's pretty expected. I think. Is there any other regions that you immediately want to speak about that you think are catching your eye? And I think to me, you've got South Korea,
I think South Korea, PSG Talon's obviously the team that everyone's excited about. Coming through, you have the sort of the Fabian influence, the Fabian effect, or buff, or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
This team learned what drones were and immediately became the best team in the region.
Yeah.
It's more to it than that. But it is amusing to see how quickly teams improve once given a sort of stronger framework to be playing around.
Yeah.
And this has just always been the issue or the narrative around why APAC has suffered, right? It's just quite frankly, you just don't have the infrastructure around it. Fnatic back in the day, Mag was very open about saying we'd go to these majors, we'd learn a lot from them, we'd try and incorporate it into our own play, and sort of just hope that other teams picked up off of what we were doing, right? And they became that sort of conduit for teaching the rest of the region how to play Siege.
Yeah.
And PSG Talent is now doing this. It's the first time we've seen a sort of real change up in who's going to the major from the region, because it is going to be Damwon not making it, right? DK not making it for the first time in a while. Fearx beating them out in that LCQ, which I was a little surprised by, but you know what? Rin's the GOAT.
Rin is the GOAT. Let's go.
I believe that Rin will win. No, I still think this team's fine.
Yeah.
I think Fearx are kind of whatever. They're very much the same as what you've seen in the past from them. I wouldn't expect anything crazy from them. They're probably out in phase 1. I think PSG Talon are an interesting case where they have shown a lot more fundamentals and this understanding of fundamentals than we've seen from a team coming out of Korea in quite a while. My fear is if it's enough now. I think there's some copium that they're going to be a 2-3 team. I think we're hoping for a little bit much here just because of who you're kind of going up against. I will say that you can't count it out. They're not making stage. I don't think they expect to make stage either. But I think they're a good team, and I think the biggest thing for them is going to be using this as a learning experience to sort of springboard through the rest of this year. I think you're looking at this team for like wait till SI, let's see what happens at SI, because I think the chance of them not making it are very very low already with making this major appearance.
Yeah.
They're straight into phase 2, which is a massive benefit for your SI points, in terms of the global standings. I think you sort of build this as the year project. What do we get at the end of the year? Right now, you're not too concerned. It's all about learning from other teams from across the world.
You've already put yourself in a good position because you've already got something from it. Like so early to get something, to get a result so quick is already like, wow, okay, great, wonderful. We've already set ourselves up, and let's see if we can keep it consistent. Like you say, they've potentially already solidified themselves in its Six Invitational. We know how big just making one major can be and what difference that can be. So if they make the second major, then it's likely that we would see them at Invite. I think for this region though, I think that I'm liking where South Korea are going. I did manage to tune into a bit more games for South Korea. Like I watched a couple of PSG Talent games, and they were looking really good as well. I think they were looking really good, and I think that the thing for me is that there seemed to be the region, at least, I guess, of, if you want to say, quotation marks, the minor regions. They seem to be one of the ones that's want to put in the effort of bringing people in, trying new things. Like Ferex, they had that boot camp. I can't remember which team they did the trade off with in Invite, Loss, where they basically did like a kind of a deal to boot camp with each other, and see if they could learn and stuff like that. And so I think it's nice that teams are willing to step outside of their regions and bring different people in, different staff, try different things to try and learn and grow that experience and become a better region, because I think that we're seeing that improvement. And I think that this was like the point, wasn't it? Like the whole start of it, of like splitting up the regions and not just having everyone playing against each other and being really kind of convoluted and messy. And this was the idea of like, okay, here's a specific league, you're on the circuit, and then letting everybody kind of formulate from there. And I think we are seeing improvements, and it is working, and I'm liking that. So Mena's another example of it as well.
Yeah,
we're seeing those improvements. I'm a Ferex enjoyer. I'm a Rin enjoyer. I'm hoping. I hope to see them getting out of the play-ins. It's gonna be difficult, I think. They have got Geeky first, so pretty easy. I mean, some of the teams in there are pretty evens with them, but there are some pretty strong teams in play-ins as well.
Yeah. I think there's lots to be excited for from this region going forwards. They've always been the one that's sort of been the most excitable, because of just like basically DK being pretty good for a decent bit of time. Obviously, Scars sort of shifted that a little bit. They're the two top regions out of it. I think Mena is the other one that is like benefiting the most from this idea of bringing outside people in. Yeah. Right, like so GK are our Mena representative again. I thought it'd be Falcons. I have to be honest. Did I watch basically any Mena? Nope. I have not, because
they fall at funny times. Mena's at like Mena's like a 1-2 p.m. start for us usually.
It's not even that. It's that like there's like 3 teams in the region, so it's just like it's hard to justify watching the whole league. And even when you do, it's hard to get a good read on what these teams like are actually capable of, because a lot of the time they're not playing against very high level competition. And that for me is like the biggest reason not to. Like, I'll tune into when like GK play Falcons and try and get an idea of what's going on there, because like it's the two good teams playing each other. But realistically, we're kind of waiting for the invitational to see what's going on. But I think again, GK, I mean, GK, they're 3 non Saudi Arabian players. 3 non-Mena players. They've got Blaz, Seriously, and now Neskin as well. They've sort of been playing a 6-man roster. Falcons is on the bench. I think that's because of the Saudi E-League, which also runs sort of like parallel to the Blast circuit. And I think you have to have 3 Mena region players for that. So that's why they're running like a 6-man roster. But I wouldn't expect Falcons to play at the major. Falcons, the player.
Yeah.
Not the team. The team up there.
It's also nice to see Blaz back.
Yeah,
somewhere.
yeah.
So yeah, you know, Wales is just heard from
Well, it's
Blaz.
like they lost Noodle, they had to grab another one, right? But
Yeah,
like you think like the big run that like everyone knows GK4 is the Atlanta Major when they're running like the Noodle leader core,
yeah.
right? Like so it's like it's always been this idea of like we bring people from outside the region who can help us get a better understanding of how we play the game. You now have players on, and you lost to Sham as well, right? Which people thought was going to be a big deal for them.
Hmm.
Um, but instead, you've got Key and Trilix who have been around now for quite a while, seriously on that roster for a decent bit of time as well. Even if not being like a Mena region player, like technically, right? I think he's Turkish. But the idea is that you've got those three players who have now been able to pick up off of various iterations of different sort of external
Hmm.
influences. And now with this Blazneskin idea, again, you're introducing more of these ideas from Europe, more of these ideas from Brazil, and I can see why they are sort of still the top dog in their region,
Yeah.
in spite of all the changes, right? Like everyone else has kind of gone for full Mena cores, and I think that information gap has benefited them quite a bit. Um, I think they're actually a team that I'd be looking at to escape that phase one. Straight to phase one, I'd be looking at them to escape it. I think that's partially due to the draw. I think they've been kind of
Yeah.
gifted the easy path out. Whichever team makes it out in place of Geeke is the easy path team.
Hmm.
I think it's very unlike like you look at the four teams. We'll sort of get to this in a second. I would have been like G2, SSG, Bleed, Liquid. Those are the four teams you'd expect to make it out. Because of the way it draws, it's very likely that Liquid playing G2 in the first round, then end up playing like a Bleed, or there's potentially a space station world where they end up playing a space station depending on what happens. But
Yeah, yeah.
like, it's been a bit messy because of that, and I think there's that fourth spot that has suddenly opened up to the likes of a CAG, a Cruelty, or a GK,
Hmm.
potentially a Fear X. One of those four probably escapes, right? Whereas like normally be like, that's they're the foregone conclusions. So I think there's some interest there, and I think this is probably my front runner to break out because of that benefit.
Yeah. I could probably agree with you there. Mena, there wasn't exciting. There wasn't quite a fun region to watch, but they have been at least for the last wee while that they've appeared. So I'm hopeful that they can get some action from them. Of course, in play-ins, they've, like you say, a bit of a kinder draw, so there is a chance that we can get them into phase two. But speaking of that phase one area, Bleed are in there, and I know there was a bit of controversy about how it is kind of worked out and like the way that the regions have been assigned areas and where and which parts of the majors they get to qualify into. Bleed, they win their the region, they go for they do top the
Yeah,
regular
Asian
season, then
League.
they win, then yeah, the top the Asian League, and then they go for the playoffs. I think pretty comfortably. I think Furia gave them a little bit of a game in the final there, but still think in the end it was relatively comfortable. Bleed obviously then qualify into that phase one area in the play-ins. I think they'll probably still feel a bit hard done by that. I think given how well they've been performing over the last year.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, right? Because we're seeing this shift where we've gone from 16 teams in phase one with only 8 teams going into phase two to that sort of reversal of it, where
Yeah.
more teams are loaded straight into phase two, and it's going to make this phase one a lot more competitive. I feel like it's sort of artificial competitiveness, if we're being completely honest,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like saying like, oh, I think these games are going to be tighter because you've just got less teams and less of the good teams in it. In theory, and again, by jumping some of these lower region teams up, you're increasing the diversity in phase two. It does mean that obviously you have some teams that might just get pummeled a little bit earlier on. I think we're actually in a pretty good spot in terms of the teams that have made it. It's like what Bliss, Scars, and PSG. I think like you're looking at those three and you're like, actually, you know what? These guys are all pretty legit teams. I think they're teams that I'm not surprised to see in phase two. Like if there was a group stage and they
Yeah.
made it through, I wouldn't be surprised. So I think it all pans out kind of okay for me.
Yeah, I think so. I think yeah, I probably agree with you there. I think Bleed Door probably thinking we should be
It's a bit
face the
unfortunate.
team. Yeah, but it's just the
It's
way it worked out, the way that it was assigned. I think it's
yeah,
different. I think I remember seeing
it's
something about
gonna
this
be
being
different
different.
for each major. So it's It's basically, I can't remember exactly what it is. It's either that it's going to rotate or it's going to shift based on highest placement at the last major.
I think
But
that's what it is. Yeah.
I think Southeast Asia is supposed to get it for the Montreal major, which is our next one. But I could be wrong on that. I can't remember which of the two it is, but it does make things like SI points a little bit messy because if you win your region, let's say Bleed win now, right? They've won Southeast Asia or Asia League. They go to the major and they don't make it out of phase one, right? I mean, they're playing what, CAG first round. So say they beat CAG, they play Space Station, they lose to Space Station, and they play against Liquid, they lose against Liquid. Okay, I mean, there's a world in which they lose to Space Station in round 2 of the upper bracket. G2 somehow lose to Liquid, and so they go from playing like they beat CAG, they play Space Station, they play G2, they're now out of the major, right? Like a bit rough, but it could happen. You then go back next time around, Fury win your league, and they get dropped up into phase 2. They now suddenly skyrocket UNSI points because of their automatic placement. Even if they go 0-3 and drop out, that can mess with the standings from your regional league and how that affects the global standings. So I do think there's some difficulties there, and I think it's basically come down to the fact that with this shift to 16 teams, you've got 9 from your core, right? Your North America, your EU, your Brazil. You can't have an odd number of teams because you need to make this plans work out sufficiently. So you have Japan and Korea, which get 2 spots anyway, while the top one can go straight on in. What do you do with this lingering third seed? And that comes down to just the difficulty of having 9 regions that fill into your system, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just how it goes, basically.
If I'm right in saying, though, there's less people at the majors as well, so that's made it difficult.
4 less teams.
So there's 4 less teams. So there
used to be 2 LATAM, 2 Mena. No, sorry. There was 2 LATAM, 3 Korean, 3 Japanese, and 2 Asian teams. Asia League teams. So each of those regions lost 1 spot.
So yeah, it was always going to be a rough kind of way that it would work out for them. I'm still pretty confident that Bleed will get through that play-ins. I think again it depends on draws, really. It depends on where people end up and if they can perform. I think that Bleed probably beat. I don't know. It's difficult to kind of. The Bleed Space Station one's the one I'm thinking of. I'm just like,
I mean, I think Bleed lose to Space Station, but I think they beat Liquid later in the run. They meet them.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll certainly see. In terms of the other teams that have qualified, we've already mentioned them a couple of times, but Bliss, there they are. I think a lot of people will be happy with Bliss being there. I think they've garnered quite a bit of support, and that comes with it, kind of like the GK story, where you make a little bit of a run and people like start to get behind you, and Team Bliss have that. They won their thing pretty comfortably. There was not really much conversation with it. I don't think wasn't a surprise that they got through their league and then won the playoffs, and then that was that basically.
Yeah, not at all surprise. I think it's like an LFO or something. It's the second team in the region as well. It's like the Chef Jeff stack, right? It's not actually called the Chef Jeff stack. Just the player that strokes like comes to mind immediately.
Yeah.
So I think this team, again, like Bliss, you expect them to make these majors, have that sort of regional dominance. They'll come through. I'm sure there'll be a good laugh. I'm sure they'll play decently well, right? Like, it's nice seeing Bliss because they are actually taking games off of these big teams. They beat and knocked out Wolves from SI. They play really well against some of these good teams. Close games against SSG and Wolves in Atlanta, for example. Yeah, I'm happy to see them back. I don't think they're going to make a deep run, but I think Phase 2 is a good showcase for them. I almost am kind of sad they're not in Phase 1.
Yeah.
Because I would have liked to see... Not because... Like, I'm happy they're in Phase 2. I just would have liked to see them play in best of 3s. Because I think they've been really, really strong in best of 3s against some of these really good teams, and I'd like to keep seeing them do that. I think best of 1s offer like this weird middle ground where you can run over people, but sometimes you get caught off, and it can be a bit rough.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably agree with you in that. I mean, we're falling into that storyline of G2, isn't it? Where they're like, oh yeah, we don't want to like win our games because we want to play more games, and kind of warm into it, and think that's better stuff. Which, let's be honest, Cheetah probably kind of be one of the ones that actually benefit from that.
Yeah.
But enough of that side of the world. I think I don't have much more to add on Bliss other than that they just completely ran through. They did make it a bit ropey on the last day. They lost 8-6 or they won 8-6, and they did make it look like they might not quite get through the Unbeaten, but they did. They look comfortable, and I think that they will bring something good to the major. They're a good team to have there. It's a good following as well. I know in the crowd that there will be a lot of support for them, given that Tom G. Sherlock is now moving down under, and that's going to be his team of choice. So he's probably going to be screaming for them and stuff if they get to the stage. So that would be nice.
I'm sorry, guys. They're not making it to a stage. I don't want to I don't want to come here and be the buzzkill, but like.
Tom, if you're listening, close your ears. That's fine.
They're not making it to a stage. Tom, you can have ITB, okay? I'll give you ITB. Yeah, again, like competition is just high. Like if they make it, don't get me wrong, I am front row yelling for them to make it far.
Oh, of course.
But let's be a little bit real, they're not going to make it.
Yeah. The final team for qualifying was Team Cruelty. Now, it's fun enough the way that LATAM works is it's in like two halves, north, south. They play each other in the kind of group stages, and then they play each other in playoffs. That's usually how it works. It's really funny because I always watched at least the first 3 games because it's like it would start
at a really
like,
convenient time.
Yeah, it would start at like 11 p.m. So then I'd be finished. I'd kind of like watch the first half and then miss the second half. So I always knew it was happening in half of the league and not the other half. But then I'm sure that they switched some of them around.
They started off with always doing. I think it was like North Division first, and then halfway through the season they flipped it over. Which I think like makes sense from like a perspective, right? If you want to like, if you know, like us, you go to bed halfway through, like it does kind of make sense that you see like both halves of the league at some point. It's also quite funny that you could just watch only half of it and just only know like 6 of the teams. I think it's quite interesting.
Well, that's basically what happened to me. It was like I was watching the first half and then I was going to bed and then I'd like basically just repeat that for weeks. So then I got like half of the league for it, and then I was like, oh wait a minute, there's different teams. I was like, oh okay. All right, okay. Because there's a whole lot of seeds going on. You can only watch so much. The way it worked out though was quite nice. I quite like the way the brackets kind of worked out. Team Cruelty, they topped their group, and or LATAM North, Vasco they top LATAM South, and then they run for the playoffs and actually face each other in the final, which was kind of sick.
Yeah, it was a nice way to tie it up.
Yeah, it was kind of sick. Team Cruelty looked really comfortable in the final though. Yes,
it was really good.
It went to overtime first map, but I think they did look pretty comfortable.
I think Cruelty did look like the best team coming out of it. Obviously, there was some excitement around 6 Karma, which was basically just a Brazilian retiree stack.
Yeah.
But seeing Vasco, Argentinian team, taking on Cruelty, a Mexican team, in the final is like really nice to see for that region. And it does dissuade more people from just being like, let's buy out a spot, right? Like you had Revan, an EU team, playing, and you also had 6 Karma. Both of them are in North as well, because they're playing under the Mexican representation. So they're both in that North side. So seeing both of them there and still get beaten out is really good for the health of that region. Because obviously we did have Revan at one of the majors at Copenhagen.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's nice to see that we are actually seeing like that talent from the region come through. If we had 2 spots and Vasco was also going to the major, that would have been very cool.
Yeah, it would have been, yeah. Probably, unfortunately, don't.
But it's how it goes. Cruelty, you've seen them before. It's the core of Alpha Ferris, who were also at Copenhagen, I think.
Yes.
And so they're a team that have been at these majors before. Am I expecting anything crazy from them? No.
They're in phase 1 as well, which is tough.
They're in phase 1. It's always new phase 1 is really hard for these teams because we basically get to see them play like 2 games.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, and that's kind of how it was before, but you'd get to see them play like a game against another lower region first, right? Where it's like, I think the bracket run for Cruelty is like they play. Who do
You
they
got
play
SSG
first? They SSG first.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's likely they play CAG. It'll be the loser of CAG versus Bleed. So it's like, okay, I could see them. I could see them beating CAG. Like maybe they get a win in there,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like they play the loser of like it's hard to explain, but like G2 Liquid, the winner of that one against FearX GK or GK, the winner of that one, and then whoever loses that. So it's like FearX or GK most likely. So like that's where you get to see these sort of inter-regional matchups play out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what the read on them is coming in. I think it's just unlikely we see much from them, and that's just kind of due to the nature of how this phase one plays out. But could they beat CAG? Sure, I think they could beat CAG.
Yeah, I mean, this is what the play-ins for 4, eh? Like, they could be a couple extra chances. See, you could kind of squeeze through. There's still 4 teams go through, by the way. It's still a decent amount of teams. Yep. Like, you know what I mean? It's 8 teams, and 8 teams, half of them go through. So you got, like, your favourites, let's be honest, SSG, Bleed, and then G2 and Liquid, right? So you do have your 4 clear ones, but the thing is, obviously, the big sticker is this obviously leads us into maybe the discussion before we kind of close off things was about the play-ins and where things are. But Team Liquid and G2, they draw each other first, so that's an immediate benefit to everybody else. And you go, oh, wait a minute, oh, we've got a chance here, because they're gonna one of them's gonna be knocked in that lower bracket right away, and then they only have that one life. Of course, if it's G2, I think that even if they do get locked into that lower bracket, I think they still come out of it. But Liquid, they're looking pretty human at the minute, I think, given the people they have on that roster. Obviously, you're an Escapalo, so I think it can be anyone's game. Space Station, Bleed, they've been good. They've shown us flashes of brilliances. I think they should get through them. They should get through these play-ins, but again, it's still best of 3 formats. It's still knockouts. All it takes is, it's like what you were saying with E1 earlier. They just activate in the play-ins or in the playoffs. Like this is what happens. Some teams are just better in a playoff format, or they're better in a best of 3 format, and it's exciting. So, especially given that we get some bangers to open up, because the play-ins, they can be a bit of a snooze fest, because you're kind of like, right, okay, we kind of know what's going to happen here. That's fine. At least we're opening up with Team Liquid and G2 day one. You're like, great, let's go, let's get our teeth into it. Starts on obviously the 16th, which is tomorrow as of recording of this, so depending on when you listen to it, it's going to be a good day. I'm excited, Golu.
Do you want to very quickly do a quick speed run of the bracket?
Yeah, let's go for it. Yeah,
or like the prediction, right? It's like the pick'ems thing.
Sure, let's do it. Let me get where's my predictions thing, because I haven't actually filled mine out yet. So that's a good.
No, neither. It is locking in soon.
Predictions. 22 hours and 34 minutes until this kicks off. So teams qualified in the upper bracket. It's kind of weird how you can pick anyone for them, but they're not.
Yeah, I think this should have been done more carefully, because it's difficult, right? Because like I've seen things on Twitter of like people who don't follow the esport but just like picking, because like you get a free battle pass if you get like good enough predictions, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you see them and it's like, oh, I think like BDS. It's like, oh, like it's kind of rough, because like you're kind of lulled into this false sense of like, oh, I can pick any of these teams. Oh, I know BDS is good. It's like you can get a bit messed up by it.
Let's go for it. Let's start with upper bracket predictions. Let's see so this is specifically if you're listening. So this is play-ins for phase 1 of the Manchester Major, starting on the 16th of May, running until the 17th. So that's the next 2 days after today. The teams are as follows: Space Station Gaming versus Team Cruelty, then Bleed Esports versus CAG, FearX versus GK, and Team Liquid versus G2 Esports. Everybody starts in the upper bracket, of course, and then it's basically just a free-for-all, and then we'll see where everybody finishes. Now, upper bracket, who are you taking for getting through that upper bracket, you think, as a qualified team?
SSG and G2 as my 2 teams making it through the upper bracket. The expected sort of trend for both these teams: Space Station beat Cruelty. I think that's pretty set. Space Station should beat either Bleed or CAG. I think it's Bleed that will win that game over CAG. So I think that will be who they play in the second round. I think SSG should beat Bleed. This is one where there is plenty of opportunity for upset, and I think if you put Bleed to win this, I'm fully with you. I'm like, you know what, fair play. I can buy into it. But I just think it should be SSG. I think that's where my gut is. G2 should beat Team Liquid. The last time they looked very comfortable doing that at SI when they played. And I think it should be a sort of a run back for them. FearX versus GK to find out who they'd play in the upper bracket semis. I think either team, G2, beats pretty comfortably. So that's my read on that.
I think I'm going to agree with you on some of that. I'm taking Space Station and G2 and qualifying for the upper. I think that's pretty standard. For the lower, the thing is obviously you're trying to like guess the bracket as well.
So the way the bracket is working is that the bottom two upper bracket games, the bottom two quarterfinals, the loser of those will play each other. So if Team Liquid lose the G2, they will play whoever loses from GK and FearX.
Right, okay.
And then Cruelty will then play whoever loses from Bleed and Cyclops. That then gets flipped for the next round. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So then if like Bleed lose to SSG in the upper bracket semifinals, they won't replay a team they've already played. They'll go to the other side, so which is likely to be Liquid. So the way I have this looking for me is that I think I'm torn between GK and FearX. I'm going to go FearX. I'm going to believe in the Koreans. I'm going to believe in Rin supremacy. So GK get knocked down to lower bracket. They play against Team Liquid, who lost to G2. Team Liquid win. They move on. SSG beat Bleed in the upper bracket semi-finals. So Bleed get dropped down, play against Team Liquid. And then FearX are against G2. They lose, and they play against the winner of the Cruelty CAG game, which is going to be Cruelty. And it will be a FearX Cruelty lower bracket semi-final with FearX making the phase 2.
So you have what, Bleed going out?
No, I have Bleed beating Team Liquid and knocking Liquid out.
Oh, okay. That's quite funny. I actually picked SSG, G2, Bleed, and FearX.
Nice.
Great minds think alike. I'm locking them in now. They're saved. Sorry to whichever team I've cursed. Whether it's all of them. We move. That is what it is. So reminder, if you are listening to this today, the 15th, or you're listening on the 16th, just before it starts, go to the website, make sure that you have your predictions in R6 Esports, put your predictions in, you can get some free stuff. Make sure you get it done, because it's literally just free. Like, it's just so free. Like,
it is quite literally free.
That, like, why not? You know? And that is it. Your playing predictions, they end in 22 hours from this point of it. So you have until the games start to basically put your play-ins in. Yep. Playoffs, you have the full of the play-ins to watch, so you can watch the play-ins, make a decision from there, then put your play-ins one in, your playoffs one in even. And then once your playoffs are, same goes for that. You can watch all of the playoffs. Then once the playoffs conclude, you can put your predictions in for the finals. So again, just be careful that you don't accidentally predict a team that isn't actually in it. Because you can put BDS in the play-ins one, which they aren't in the play-ins, so they can't ever be in that qualifying part.
You will not get that prediction correct.
Exactly.
Unfortunately.
So yes, I have locked that in with Space Station, D2, Bleed, and FearX. I think that will be a delightful little point to end on. So make sure you get those in. We've had a very quick, brief, I say brief, but it's been 2 hours. It's just nuts. Again, we always talk longer than we intend to, but it's fine. That's what we're here for. It's just for waffle time. It's been nice catching up with everyone. It's been a little while since we've did this. We should hopefully be back to regular episodes. We'll definitely have one probably before the next phase of the major.
Yep.
It'll probably be a little bit shorter just because there won't be as much to talk about, but and we'll maybe squeeze in some of the patch notes and stuff in there as well, because I'm not going to keep you listening on for too long today. But yeah, phase 1 starts tomorrow. Golly, I'm excited. Phase 2, of course, will be next week, and then we will be there for phase 3. We'll be in the flesh, inside Manchester, ready to go, ready to watch, and experience my first major. You've been to a major before, though.
Been to 2 before.
Whoa.
Yeah, look at me.
Listen, buddy. It's my first major. I'm excited. It's also I also have some excitement as well because my team are actually there. Been a BDS fan for like 5, 6 years, and they're actually there and actually have a chance. So I'm hoping that I will, of course, for my predictions, not be putting them anywhere in my predictions. There's no cursing happening here.
It's like the RXWD days as well.
Yeah, also fun. Yeah. RXWD like yeah.
Icon.
Yeah, my guy, RX man, always on that nomad.
I just appreciate that. Like it's often forgotten, but BDS was saved by the fact that there was no relegations that season because they came last.
Yep.
They would have been insta relegated under the previous season's thing and gone straight down to Challenger League, and then we like changed format with Faceit taking over like shortly afterwards.
Yeah.
So like saved by the bell on that one a little bit.
Certainly was. Anyway, I'm happy for it. I've got my BDS flag ready to go. Actually,
okay.
I'll show you. Look at this.
I mean, you say show me, I can't see it.
Well, anyway, he can't see this, but we can pretend. I'm waving a pink BDS flag right now.
Okay. Is it the blue jersey you got as well?
I've got the blue jersey, yeah.
Nice.
The one that looks like the French national team, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Hey ho, we move. I'm ready to go for the major. It's for £750,000 prize pool. Oh, I'm excited. GoluMolu is a lot of cash. You don't obviously win that as a prize pool, but you know they win a decent.
Yeah, it's like probably at 250k, right?
I think it's 250. Yeah, I think they get for the winner.
Split like between 5 players, 3 staff, probably the organization itself. Anyway, you get good money.
You get a lot of money, and you get bragging rights because it's a major. Because that's what you want to be winning, and then we have off season after that, and hopefully we have some off season tournaments coming up. We've not had anything announced yet, but I imagine that will be shortly after the major. I would imagine so. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Please. Let's get some action in the summer. But until then, we will see some of you at the major. We'll see some of you next week. We'll record something. But enjoy the phase 1 games, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.